So today is the 15th day of Shvat, Tu B'Shvat, the 13th of January. And so we saw yesterday this very, very Yotzei Dofen, very extraordinary explanation that we said couldn't come from Rav Chaim Vital because he would never say something like this. It came from Rav Yosef Ibn Tabul. It's called Yosef Ma'arava. וגם צריך להיות הראש בית דין מקודש בפה דווקא כי הדיבור שעושה בפנימיות תורה בדאבא יסד ברטה כידוע דמהבל הדיבור נעשה ומקיף וכו'. So it says, and there is another thing here in the laws of sanctifying the new moon, that the Ab Beis Din, the head of the tribunal, he has to say with his mouth mekudash, sanctified. Why? Because that's another element of Abba. It's another element of wisdom. This time it's the speech. The speech is the malchus of wisdom. So we're putting everything together. Netzachod, or the witnesses. Yesod is the tribunal. What they do. They connect. And then finally, when they say it, that's the malchus of wisdom, of Abba. Okay, so now we come into this very, very interesting sugya. Very interesting question. Why is this done by a Beis Din? In general, why do we call the court a Beis Din? Beis Din means this is where the din is. This is where the judgment is. So when you think Kabbalah is all based on that the nature of the world is harsh. God created the world with din.
With din, yes.
And then he added rachmim. He added mercy.
Yes, yes.
So it's a very interesting thing. Why would we add more din to the world? Why would we call this a Beis Din? So this is this thing, for instance, a house of judgment.
House of mercy.
Should have called it a house of mercy, of compassion.
Yeah.
In the same way that the Rebbe didn't like the fact that they called, in Hebrew, they call hospitals Beit Cholim, a house of the sick.
Yeah, right.
It says, no, this is a house of healing. It's not a house, so... Refuah, better refuah. All these things that you choose, they play a tremendous significance in the way that you see things. So a person goes into the Beit Cholim, he goes to be sick.
The house of the sick.
Yeah, he's sick. He should remain sick. That's where he gets it. Or that. But if you're going to the house of healing, something completely different. Your disposition is completely different. You're expecting to be healed. So the same thing by the Beis Din. Especially, so if you're talking about trying things between one person and another, I understand why you call it a Beis Din. Why? Because you have to, two people, one is right and one's wrong, or partially right, partially wrong, and you have to cut between. You have to sever the binds here that don't make any sense. But when it comes to doing something like this, why would you call it a Beis Din? I mean, here you're elevating the malchus, the feminine, up to its source. There should be independently received from Abba, right? The whole thing we said in the beginning is that when we sanctify the new moon, we're taking the feminine and we're connecting it to the Father, to the wisdom, directly, without going through Zal, without going through its husband. And that was the whole thing. That's why we sanctify the moon when it's closest to the sun. So it's receiving directly, without receiving anything from the earth. The earth is like Zal. Remember that whole description that we had on the previous page. So why would we call this a Beis Din? Okay. So this is a little bit more difficult to understand. So he says, ולפי שכל העלאות צריכות להיות על ידי הגבורות דווקא, ולא על ידי החסדים. So he says, he starts with the proposition. The proposition is that whenever you're talking about elevating something requires judgment. And this needs to be understood why. Why do you would think that if I want to elevate someone, I need to have compassion on them, to pull them with love. Why would it be with judgment? So let's see. Because the nature of loving kindness, right? If I would be giving them loving kindness instead of judgment, the nature of what I'm giving is to go from above to below, because it's likened to water. Loving kindness, chesed, is likened to water. So what kind of vector am I adding to the person? I'm actually adding a vector, like a movement in them, to go down.
Because it's coming from above.
Because I'm giving it from above.
Yeah, that's right.
So they're like, they're pushed in the same direction.
Yes.
Now, it doesn't seem that way in the beginning. In the beginning, it seems to you that when you give someone loving kindness, you're elevating them. But it's not a real elevation.
You know, I mean,
Right. It says even that when we're standing at Mount Sinai, it says that God forced us with the mountain itself.
yes.
So the Alter Rebbe explains, what do you think, that this was a judgment? It was like something, because if you're forcing him with love. There's a song even, killing me softly with your...
Killing me softly.
right?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't, you can squelch something with love,
absolutely.
but even if you don't do too much, the whole thing of love is that I don't need to hold myself up. In fact, it's like a surrogate type of holding myself up. You're doing it for me.
The tough love.
Yeah.
You know, in other words, you know what I'm saying?
Tough love
Sometimes
means that you already maybe have more of a... You're holding back,
That's it.
not to give love too much. That would be like tough
In order
love.
to
Right.
yes.
Because otherwise, if you give
Smother.
too much love, you smother. Right. So, but again, the direction of loving kindness is from above to below. אבל האש, שהוא מבחינת גבורה, טבעו לעלות. But judgment, gvura, might, the left side, it elevates. It's like fire. Fire always wants to go up. ולכן אומרים שם מ"ב דהנה בכוח לפני קריאת שמע של המיטה, שאז, משום שאז צריך להיות העלאת הנשמה בבחינת מן ביסוד דנוקבה, כמו שכתוב, ואלך הפקיד רוחי. That's why whenever we need to create an elevation in davening, and particularly before we go to sleep, we say the name of 42 letters. Ana b'choach gdura simincha. That's Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Yud, Taf, Tzadik. It's this name that has 42 letters. And we have a poem that has the initials are these letters. We say this before we go to sleep. Why do we say this before we go to sleep? Because this neshama has to now be elevated. It's going up back to its source. When I sleep, it goes back up to its source. So to push it along the way, to get it going, we say this name, which is the name of might. And the name of 42 is always considered to be the name of might. שזהו על ידי שם מ"ם בית גבורה. It says this in the Zohar and other places. This is the name of Gevura. Where does it come from? By the way, it comes from the first 42 letters of the Torah. The first 42 letters of the Torah describe creation. Like we said, creation was done with Gevura. It was done by din. Okay? Otherwise, it wouldn't stand. It wouldn't be able. I mean, if you want something to especially to rise, you have to give it tools that it can use.
Right.
But when you give it love, what you're doing is you're giving it the power of expansion, but not the power of rising. Right? There's a lot of expansion in love. In fact, when a person receives love, that's what causes their ego to expand. It's impossible not to, because it's just how we react to it. So if I want someone to rise, then I need to give them might. וכן מזה הטעם בקידוש מי חטאת שהם העלאה כשירים נשים לקדש לפי שיש בדעתם יתרא דגבורה, אף על פי שדעתם קלה ואין בה יתרא דחסדים, משום שמכל מקום נצרך לצורך העלאה די ביתרא דגבורה. The same thing he says, I don't understand. I understood this before. This word suddenly escapes me. What he wants with this word? What he means to say is when we שירים נשים. I have to say I don't understand suddenly this sentence. I don't know what he means. But he's saying something about Mei Chatat, about the Para Aduma, which is also might. But I don't understand what he's saying. Suddenly it escapes me how to read this. משום שמכל מקום לצורך העלאה די ביתרא דגבורה, כמו שכתוב באורך בתורה על פסוקי פרה אדומה. So I don't understand exactly what he means here with the red heifer, with the פרה אדומה. לכן גם לצורך העלאה זו, בקידוש החודש צריך להיות בית דין דווקא, שהוא מבחינת דין וגבורה. That's why we use a beis din, a tribunal which is called a court of justice. And the justice here is needed, we call it a court of justice because that's the left side, that's the din, that's the gvura, that's the might, that elevates the feminine up to the wisdom. אך להבין שהרי נדבר שבית דין סמוכים מבחינת אבא. But this seems to contradict the fact that we've been explaining all along, that someone who is ordained comes from the right side, from father. That's what we said all the time, that he's the Yesod Abba. It's like that he receives the Shlichus. He's the extension.
We're saying left now, though.
But now we're saying that they're called the beis din. So how could ordained who are from the right be called the beis din that are from the left? אם כן, איזו שייכות יש להם למידת הגבורה דווקא עד שיקראו בשם בית דין? So how can we call them a beis din? Because their entire, if it was just a court, like you convene three people who are not ordained, you could call that a court of justice. How can you call the ones who are ordained beis din? So with this we'll end, and hopefully get the answer tomorrow.